We asked you what questions we could answer for you about the watch market, and in this video, we'll tackle some of them. These questions come from our followers both here on YouTube as well as on Instagram, where we post daily updates on the performance of all sorts of watches on the secondary market. As always, thank you for following us here on YouTube, and if you're not already following us on Instagram, look us up at WatchCharts and consider giving us a follow there as well. All the numbers in this video come from WatchCharts.com. Are you looking to browse listings from the biggest private sales marketplaces across the web? See insights on whether you're getting a good deal or not? Manage your collection and track its value over time? You can do all this and more on WatchCharts.com, the world's most powerful watch market research platform, providing daily updated prices on over 24,000 watches. Dive into the data yourself at WatchCharts.com. The first question we'll answer is the one that was alluded to in the title to this video. Does the GMT-Master Pepsi perform better than the rest of the collection? This came from a follower on Instagram, and I think this question comes from this perception, perhaps, that the Pepsi, out of all of the other watches in the GMT-Master collection, does the best on the secondary market. Now, if you look at just the premium over retail that you have to pay for any of the steel variants, it is certainly true that the GMT-Master Pepsi now has the highest premium over retail, even more than the Sprite, and it's more than the Batman or the Batgirl, depending on whichever bracelet option you choose. But if we were to see how they have performed on the secondary market over the last, let's say, year, what does that breakdown look like? Well, we can compare the market performance over the last year for these three steel references: the BLRO, which is the Pepsi, the BLNR, which is the Batman or the Batgirl, and then the VTNR, the 126720, which is the Sprite. And over the last year, all three of them have declined in value, but the Pepsi has lost the least amount of value off of its market price. And so in that sense, it has performed better than the other watches in the stainless steel part of the GMT-Master collection. But this is just over the last year. We can, in fact, take this view over the last 3 years. And so still the blue line, which is the Pepsi's market performance, and then the yellow line, which is the Batman's market performance, and then the green line, which is the VTNR's market performance, only starts sort of in the middle because that's when the watch came up on market. And it was trading at an insane premium when it first came on the market. You know, over $40,000 was the market price for a watch that retails between $10,000 and $15,000. But since then, as its availability has increased on the secondary market, those market prices have come down. And so over the last 3 years, the Pepsi, again, performs the best because it's up 4%. The Batman is up 1.2%, and the Sprite is down 56.6%. But again, the reason that decline happened is because it started off on the secondary market at quite a premium. So objectively, 4% over 3 years is better than 1.2%, which is better than 56.6% of a decline. I would like to conclude the answer to this question by just underscoring that even though the Pepsi has performed better, it is also still trading at a premium that is considerably higher than the premium for the Batman, for example. And in fact, now the premium is even greater than that for the Sprite. And I think that is explained by the fact that this is the most iconic GMT-Master because it harkens back to the original implementation of this design. It's the one that looks very nice and is desired by the broadest possible audience, and that is reflected in the premium over this watch's retail price. The second question is also one that comes from Instagram, and this one is it a good time to buy a Rolex Submariner date? And this is an interesting question because it's one that we get quite a lot on whether or not now or whenever the question is asked for a specific watch, whether that is the right time to buy this watch. And it's, in this case, the 126610 LN has now been out for a little over 3 years on the secondary market. And so what we can see is just the price history trend over that time range illustrates just straight off the bat that the market price today, and if we look at the market price range, which is the blue band that you see around the blue line, in fact, is at the lowest level that it has ever been. Currently trades just over $13,000. However, that is still and has always remained above the retail price for this watch, even though there have been increases and decreases in the market price. Over the last month, this watch is, of course, down. The 3 months, the 6 month, the 1 year, and even the 3-year period, its market price has declined by 13.3% over the last 3 years. But 13,000 is still above the current retail price of this watch, which is 10,250. So in one sense, on the secondary market, this is definitely the lowest the price has ever been for this watch. But at the same time, even that lowest market price is still above the retail price. And then the other thing that I would add on to that observation is that there is little to no expectation that in the near term, these prices could not continue falling further. So yes, it is at an all-time low on the secondary market, but that does not mean that it could not go lower. And so when you consider that, whether or not now is a good time to buy a Rolex, a Mariner date, really depends on, how the logic for that decision boils down to you or for you. Whether this is at $13,000 a watch that you are willing to put your money behind, or whether you're comfortable sort of, holding your space on the waiting list at your local AD, or if you want to wait to see if prices fall even further, the way they have ever since the market started correcting in the spring of 2022. And then the last question is a bit more of an interesting one, which is there any new shining star in watch brands? And I think there's a couple of different ways in which this question could be addressed. The first, which is just, is there a shining star from within a market context? I think my answer on that would necessarily be an opinion, but in this instance, there is some data that I can use to sort of back that up, which is that a new shining star is Christopher Ward. And what makes this brand special is that they are redefining really what is possible at accessible price points in the luxury watch category. I don't think there's anything really on their catalog that retails for over around $5,000 for a Swiss-made watch that, in the case of the Belcanto or the C1 Moonphase, brings a certain level of complication and whimsy and just, this sort of attachment to high horology complications. But at the same time, if you just want to buy a diver or a field watch or a GMT watch or any number of other such watches that enthusiasts generally tend to gravitate towards when they first enter the space, and even long after they've been in the space, Christopher Ward has a very, very exciting and very, very attractive offering for each of those categories. And because these watches tend to trade at a little bit of a discount on the secondary market, even though their retail price points are quite accessible, on the secondary market, the picture only gets better. And in fact, we've looked at Christopher Ward's performance on the market when we talked about 3 brands to watch on the secondary market earlier this year in another video. So if you're interested in seeing the brands that we covered there in a little bit more detail, I would encourage you to go check out that video. The other answer that I would give to this question, I think, is just much more subjective and personal, and also doesn't necessarily keep the market in view, but just sort of what is interesting in watches to me right now. And I think the way that I would answer that question is by highlighting Berneron, which is a new brand for which there are no actual watches out yet, but these are watches that are going to sit at a several tens of thousands of dollars price point, and it's going to be extremely limited production. And what makes these watches special is that they bring a certain level of high horology execution to a very whimsical take on a watch that really doesn't look like anything else out there. The closest that anything probably gets is the Cartier Crash, but even that, I think, is a different take from what Berneron are trying to do, which is really taking that philosophy of answering the question, what would a watch look like if it looked melted, and expanding that not just into the dial and the way that the dial is laid out, but even the way that the movement is constructed. And for that reason, I think is probably one of the most interesting things that I have seen recently in watches. But again, like I said at the start, these are just 3 of the questions that we've received. We hope to answer more questions in the future. So if you have any particular questions about the secondary watch market or about the watch market or about watches in general that you think would be interesting for us to talk about on this channel in future videos, let us know in the comments. and thanks again for watching.